Sports photography is such a beautiful thing because there's art and athletic movement. For the past 6 months, I haven't really been consistently uploading to this channel, but I still have been photographing quite regularly on the side. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing some of my favorite photos in the world of sports and athletics, some of the stories behind them, and how I approach the game itself. And I'll also be answering some questions along the way that some of you have kindly submitted. And if you haven't already, follow me on Instagram for more updates on that and be part of the next Q&A. So let's talk about the basic principles that I carry for myself, regardless of what sport or thing that I photograph, with principle number one being respect for the players, fans, crowd, the culture behind it. Everything sounds like common sense, but there are a lot of media people who exploit cultures of sports, cultures of anything for content and personal agenda. Always have respect. The second basic principle of my approach is to wait for the game to come to me. Now, I have my own preset of skills, right? I have my compositional eye. I have my proficiency over my gear, what film stock to use, what focal length, which 35mm or medium format camera would be appropriate for the situation. But sometimes I don't really know what to do when I show up to any given place on any given day. But because I have trust in my skills, I just have to be patient and wait for the truth, the story, and the culture to reveal itself, because over time, that's usually what happens. And the last one is called work for one. Now, this was a phrase that my first basketball coach would always yell out, work for one, work for one. It would usually be near the end of the game, and that was something that we practiced, that we can take as much time as we want to get the right shot off at the right time. And before we get started, I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. Squarespace provides some of the industry-leading tools for making a portfolio for photographers like us who want to be taken seriously. I recently renovated my website to be more focused on my documentary work. Squarespace allows a lot of customizability, from their award-winning templates to something as simple as changing the background to black. I love how my website feels more mature, and if I have any questions or problems, I know I can contact the 24/7 customer service to get myself squared away. You can start a free trial today at squarespace.com/ChrisChew. Use my code ChrisChew at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I feel like I'm most known online for my basketball work, which totally makes sense for where I live because it's so ubiquitous here in New York. Plus, I used to play basketball for 8.5 years, but I had a bitter ending to it. I took a huge break from it a long time ago, and when I moved here, photography kind of brought me back into the sport in a much more, I guess, favorable capacity, and I fell in love with the sport all over again. And I do feel like my history in the sport as an athlete has helped me understand and digest and also photograph the sport in a different way and give me a certain advantage, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So I'm going to show you a few of my favorite photos from the past 6 months, and I'm going to do the same thing for when I talk about breakdancing and tennis later on in the video. But the first real photo that I really want to talk about is this portrait of this guy named George Messiah from West 4th. This guy is a legend on the street, and this goes back to the first principle that I had, which is respect. And a part of respecting the culture is knowing who's come before you, the legends before you, and the community that has existed long before my photography hit that court. George Messiah is a viral sensation on Instagram for all of his one-on-one pickup games where he's very aggressive, he trash talks, all that stuff, but I'm just gonna be completely honest, it's a total character that he plays, because in real life, when you talk to him, he's a really sweet guy, very soft-spoken actually, and this portrait of him kind of shows that, I guess, softer side of him in the environment that he dominates. Now, the next photo that I want to talk about are the shadows on the court. Now, this one I love so much because this was a result of me tirelessly working almost every single angle that I could on this tiny little street corner basketball court. And there was a moment that I started to get a little bit bored, a little bit challenged in what I could do next to create something new. And I noticed that at the time of day that I was there chilling in the corner, the shadows were streaking across the court, and I was wondering how I was going to, I guess, bring that out in a prominent way in a photo. So actually, I flipped it upside down in post, and I think it just shows so much character, so much life, and I guess it's a new angle for me to creatively enjoy as well. This next flash photo is one of my favorites as well. This was shot on the 28mm. I think I was at 1/30th of a shutter, and the flash was at 100% power, and my aperture was probably at f/16 because I was so close to the action. And I just love the pure action and how many looks you're getting in this photo. All these characters squeezed into one frame. It's absolutely wonderful to have. And of course, the last photo that I want to talk about are the motion blur photos. I've been picking up a lot of steam online, and this was just a result of kind of just getting bored of my own process, because I've just shot this place for so long, I've shot the sport for so long, and I just wanted to change it up. Motion blur was kind of like the next avenue that I want to explore, and as you can imagine, it's very daunting for such an expensive medium one. I used Portra 800 on all of these, and the reason why I used a 75mm lens for the motion blur shots is because when you have just a tighter, longer focal length, motion is exacerbated. It's much more exaggerated. I believe I shot these at 1/30th of a shutter speed at f11 just to, you know, compensate for that increased amount of light from the slow shutter. And I just love how these photos show the speed, the action, and the aggressiveness in a contact sport like basketball. It's beautiful to me. You get these two characters fighting for each other, and you get beautiful colors, streaks of blue, orange, and everything. It's just amazing. And plus, this is the small detail that I really love about this photo over the other motion blur shots, is the glimmer of the earring. That detail makes it so perfect for me. I don't know if anybody caught that, and if you did, maybe that's why you enjoy it as well. But out of all this motion blur stuff, you get that nice little glimmer to kind of, I guess, be a nice punctuation on a beautiful photo, in my opinion. How are you able to capture the chaos of different sports? What focal length do you use? I typically use a 28 and a 75. I feel like that's like a good combo of both telephoto and wide, although a lot of people do 20 and 50. And half of the equation is just technical proficiency, kind of just knowing what a 28mm will capture in any given situation, same for 75. But usually that 28mm field of view is what I love, because I can get close and include a lot of context in the stories that I'm trying to tell. And like I said earlier, having a little bit of experience in the sport that you're trying to photograph does allow you to kind of predict what's going to happen so that you could photograph that chaos. How do you build rapport with the players for them to let you shoot them? You just got to show up a lot. Most of the times for new situations, I show up without a camera first. Then the next visit, I bring a camera, pop a few shots, talk to a couple people, and then I kind of build from there. But of course, like if you're only going to this one event, this one time, it's going to be really hard, but you are going to, I guess, have to read the room and be respectful along the way. I think that's the most important thing about any of this storytelling. So much fun photographing this breaking competition here in New York, because one, breaking started from here, so of course you would imagine that the culture and the energy behind it on its home turf is always going to be immaculate. And I used to have a really small past with being a b-boy back in high school. I wasn't really that strong back then, so I couldn't do all the power moves that I want to do, like air flares, windmills, all that stuff. So going into photographing this with way less experience as an athlete in the sport compared to my experience with basketball, I had to do a lot more waiting and watching to kind of watch the story and all the angles and photo opportunities to unfold in front of me, which is my principle number 2. Let the game come to me. I trust that my technical skills will be enough to capture something, but I had to wait for, I guess, my connection to the sport to grow to a, I guess, sufficient level. All of these photos were taken on M6s, all 35mm Tri-X. The two lenses that I used were the wide-angle Tri-Delmar, which is the 16-18-21, and then the other one was the 75mm Sumerit for the more motion blur stuff that didn't really work out nearly as I planned it to, like the basketball stuff, so there's no need to show any of those. So the one thing that I do know for sure about breakdancing competitions is crowd work. Now, you could be the most talented and athletic competitor on the floor, but if you can't incorporate the crowd into defeating the opponent across from you, you can still lose. So with this in mind, I incorporated a lot of my wide angle lens to capture all of the crowd and the energy and interactions with the dancers on the floor, because that is part of the story. So the first photo I want to talk about is not even in the main competition area, but in the warm-up area. And this is pretty cool because there are smaller mats off to the side where the competitors can warm up with their power moves and kind of just talk and have a chill moment before they go out and battle. This first photo right here is so cool because it's hip-hop from top to bottom. It's on the street, there's dancers all around you, there's one guy showing off his moves, and it's just a nice gritty scene. The second photo that I really liked from the set was kind of during the halftime of this competition. It probably was right before the semifinals went off. The DJ was just playing music for the crowd, and anybody who was from the crowd who wasn't competing were allowed to get on the dance floor, and it was just cool to kind of see this ring of people form around this one dancer right in the middle, and I was trying to find this pocket to kind of use some natural framing of the people in the crowd to kind of set up this one dancer as the focal point of the photo. And the last photo I want to talk about is incredibly epic. It was during the finals. One of the competitors was doing a head spin front dead center on the mat and in front of the crowd, and it was phenomenally epic. The framing of it, the lighting, the dramatics, everything, it was awesome. All eyes on this one dancer, and I think I love this contrast compared to basketball because there's 10 players on the court at the same time in that sport, but for breaking, it's one person on the floor and everybody is just watching you, and that is so cool to see. And you know, the black and white gritty look of it kind of adds this kind of timelessness feel. You don't know if it was taken in 2024 or 1995 or whatever it is. It's cool that way. And the follow-up photo for this was when they announced the winner. This was also really epic as well, and the person who won this competition would end up going to be the bronze medalist for men's breaking in Paris 2024 for USA, which is pretty cool. So let's quickly hop back into the Q&A. Rafa asks, after working on portrait street, how did those skills translate to sports and storytelling? So for street, on the technical side at least, it taught me how to photograph things very quickly with zone focusing, just knowing distances in general, knowing my settings in the sun, in the shade, anything in between. And for the style of street photography that I really like consuming, it taught me how to take very wide angled photos that incorporate a lot of actions to fill the frame, all that good stuff. And from my background in portraiture, well, anything can be a portrait. It's not just a headshot of someone. It's literally any photo that has a human element as the center of the story in the frame. And in the last photo that I talked about, right, of the head spinning person in the center of the crowd, that is a portrait of breaking in New York. It's street culture, it's hip-hop culture, it's breakdancing, it's a whole human storytelling element of this incredible art form that has brought so many people together. And yeah, even though this photo is not honed in on this tight shot of the one dancer in the middle, this is still considered a portrait. It's a combination of the things that I love about my street work and the ones that I consume as well. So yeah, I think that all plays into the little perfect storm. So now we get to tennis, a sport I have literally no knowledge about. So how I went about this may be more relatable because I had zero knowledge of what to do, what to photograph, what was even photographically interesting. So the first thing I do is to show up super duper early so I can do a walk around, get myself familiar with all the angles. And the first thing that jumps out of the page is that this stadium is so photogenic. Tennis courts could be really easy to photograph because they could either be blue tops, they could be red clay, they could be grass, or just vibrant colors in general. Color-wise, I think that I should avoid using black and white for the most part and just shoot more Portrait 800. The second thing I noticed is similar to breakdance competitions is that all eyes are on you. There's only 2 people to focus on instead of the 10 in basketball and 1 in breakdancing, but 2. So it's nice to know that there's this elevated stadium instead of all ground level stuff, but this elevated stadium. So there's a lot of layers. There could be a lot of depth that I could shoot. And I brought my Mamiya RZ67 to kind of have that medium format look of this compression with a wider angle view. So on that note, I want to talk about this photo first, the stadium shot from high up in the stands. I want to get a good amount of layering from the back of the heads of the guests in front of me, all bokeh'd out. And I think that this is super cool because it has this like gladiator feel of what the stadium is, and it's so beautiful. I love this photo so much. The colors were perfect, and it perfectly evoked this feeling of grandeur, of magnitude, of, I guess, scale that this stadium has to offer. So obviously the point of interest is all concentrated on that one center court, but I have to do my due diligence in walking around and trying to get these side actions going on, something that's just like not obvious. So through some downtime and even before anybody came into the stadium, I would take some photos here and there to try to get myself familiar, try to get myself warmed up. And then after I took inventory of the whole place, I kind of made mental markers on where I would stand for certain moments, how I would incorporate different fan interactions in the foreground with the action in the midground and whatever in the background. I enjoyed this next photo for its juxtaposition and its scale. I love how tiny the tennis player looks compared to the gigantic crowd behind him in the stands. It looks like a tidal wave right behind him, powering his serve, all that stuff. And I think Tri-X just makes it look more gritty, more historical, and I just like how there's no color to distract you from what I really want to show you, which is that juxtaposition of the scale. This photo was shot on 35mm film with a 75mm lens, just so I could get that compression. And I did take a few motion blur shots, but I feel like none of them hit as hard as the basketball one, so I guess these are honorable mentions to show you. And I have some other favorable shots from other interesting angles, whether that was close to the players or not, but my favorite shot of this entire weekend of this tournament was this one, and I love the championship feeling of this. This was right after the final point in the tournaments. The guy kind of closer to the camera was the one who won, and just having the cheering fans in the foreground all like underexposed, and you see like all the hands and fists going up in the air, and just the lights shining down on the stadium. The colors are beautiful. It feels like such a movie scene if you were there, and even from this still, it looks like an old movie still, and I enjoy that so much. And just like that, the tennis tournament was over. It kind of came and went really quickly, honestly, and I didn't take that many photos, but of the ones that I did, I really enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching and sitting through this. This was a lot, I know, but this is something that I'm like really excited about. Sports and arts is just like a huge thing that I'm passionate about, and hopefully you guys are too. If you guys want, there's an Instagram account called Sport Arts, which is just an abbreviation of what I just said, and there's a beautiful curation of sports and arts in photography, and I highly recommend following that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for sitting through this. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below anything that you thought and felt about this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.